You're walking alone at night. The air is cold, almost biting. Autumn hit harder than you'd thought, and you aren't dressed appropriately at all. You wore shorts to F&M and were mocked because of the current weather, and you thought you'd get the last laugh, but it turns out September really is the cruelest month. And something feels off. The road on which you walk is eerily quiet, with only the squelch of wet autumnal leaves underfoot for company. And then you think you see something out of the corner of your eye, but it was nothing. Perhaps the dancing light from your phone torch bouncing off the glistening, dampest of the undergrowth. You took the detour home through the woods, something you've done 1,000 times before. But tonight feels different. You've lost every game of Commander you played because people kept killing your commander. You reflect on that. Is it fair to kill someone else's commander? Is that even sportsmanlike conduct? Should you take time out of posting cupcakes on the Magic subreddit to ask them, is this fair? You've been daydreaming of turn 1 Sol Rings for too long and you realise you're now lost. You've stepped off the beaten path. You look around and you realise you don't know where you are. Don't panic. Breathe. Just think, which way is true north? Wait, what was that? Did you hear that? Something is moving out there. Oh shit, no! It's your worst nightmare. It's someone crawling out of the undergrowth on all fours. It's a Magic the Gathering player intending to win a game of Magic. And they're using a win condition you don't approve of. Run! That was an excerpt from my new novel. It's called Will Commander Players Ever Shut the Fuck Up? Look, I love Commander as much as the next MTG nerd, but let's be honest, it's having a severe effect on the fabric of the game itself, the communities that surround said game, and the game's overall look and feel. I came across the weirdest Reddit post the other day. I say weirdest, to be honest, it's kind of normal fare for Reddit, but it really encapsulated the issues I think we face with Magic the Gathering going forward. To paraphrase the overall tone of the post, it was, this person was a Commander player and they hated Arena because they realised that on Arena, people are trying to win. You can't try and win a game of Magic these days without being sent to prison, sent to jail. I'll go into the post in more detail and unpack it in this video. But can you imagine going into a Valorant, League of Legends, a Counter-Strike subreddit or forum and complaining that people in the online matchmaking or the online public servers and lobbies are trying to win and that upsets you? Get them! They're trying to win! All that and more in today's video, so buckle up, grab a sody pop that's not empty, and let's get to it. But first, let's get excited. I'm back on the HelloFresh hype for autumn. I am a huge fan of cooking, and this year I've been increasingly conscious of my macros, whether that be calorie cutting to lose weight earlier in the year, or just increasing my protein intake overall. HelloFresh has a huge menu, currently its biggest yet with 50+ options, all of which can be utilized with clear nutritional information to help fit your macro goals. And I love HelloFresh for having easy access, easily customizable deliveries from week to week. It's quick and easy and it fits my busy lifestyle. Often when I supermarket shop, I find myself buying too much stuff impulsively and I get stuck with decision paralysis. HelloFresh not only gives me recipe inspiration, but also gives me all the stuff I need for it without having to frantically clamber around a local shop. And whether you like it or not, summer is over and we're all craving those wholesome meals, and HelloFresh absolutely delivers on them. But it also utilizes pre-portioned ingredients, so people like me don't overindulge, I don't buy more than I need, and I get good portion control out of it too. You can support the channel by clicking the link in the description below to HelloFresh. Every purchase gives me a kickback and helps to support me to continue to grow the channel and make the content for all of you. Use the link in the description below or the on-screen code now and support the channel whilst getting some inspiration for your cooking this autumn. Right, let's read the subreddit post in question and then unpack it. Look, I'm going to blur out the names. I'm not here to create dunks on this particular subreddit user. What I will say is that this isn't a dunk, really. It's about unpacking some of the relationships that people have with Magic. The Magic Arena post goes like this. I just realized that the point of playing Arena is not to have fun, but it's to win. I don't like that. We're going to put a pin in that one. I'm going to talk about how winning is fun and it's part of a competitive game. I will come back to that more. I'm just going to go through the whole subreddit post first. And to be clear, the original title for this video, and it might still be it, is This is Your Brain on Commander. Because this is what Commander does to people. It makes people think like this. When you have a group that you play with regularly, like at your LGS, your local game store, everyone's regular decks mostly end up at the same power level, or you play your decks in a way that doesn't blow everyone out of the water. You're also sitting across from other people and don't want to be a dick, so you maybe don't bring a $1,000 deck and only play it. I think everyone should just proxy duels, by the way, as a little caveat here. So it's not about, oh, this person spent more money than me and that's a bad thing and they're a sweat. I think we should all proxy duels anyway so our mana bases are functional, so we can play the game on an even keel. I'm very pro-proxy, which removes this whole argument about money being one of the issues for paying to win. Keep in mind that I'm primarily a Commander player these days, and Commander, in my experience, is more about playing than winning, not counting tournaments, of course. I agree with this statement. We'll come back to that more in a moment. So when you remove the social aspect of the game from the equation and anonymize your opponent, the goal becomes just to win. And I just now realize that bothers me. I found myself Googling the most powerful deck in Brawl so I can increase my win rate, when I've never made a Commander deck to strictly win. I always make it to do things, usually something funny. I don't know. Maybe it's nothing, but I want to like Arena. It just feels different to IRL Magic and not in a good way. I was really hoping it would scratch my MTG itch when I don't have time to go and play, but I guess not. Ultimately, the real point this comes down to is that this player had a misalignment of goal and the tool to which they wanted to get towards said goal. They wanted to scratch the itch being Magic the Gathering as Commander. Of course, in this instance, they talk about IRL Magic as if Commander is the only in real life Magic there is, making them synonymous, mistaking the fact that Magic is many things to many people. One of its strengths is the different ways in which you can play it. I'll go into that a bit more as we go on. Something I think I'm going to talk about more and more as time goes on is that Commander is essentially Magic the Gathering, the board game. It is a board game in a sense that there is not a clear competitive structure to Commander unless you're getting into CDH. But CDH is such a small part of the overall pie that is Magic that I'm going to stick 3 asterisks next to it and fuck it off. We're not going to talk about it in this video. I just don't think it's important for this kind of sentiment. So people get into Magic or get heavily invested in Magic through Commander, and they learn this social game where you are completely correct, Reddit user. It's not the intention to win every game. The intention is to do cool stuff and enjoy Magic through the medium of fuck about and find out. And that is absolutely a valid way to play. The problem is that way to play is not online anywhere. Well, that's not true. Magic the Gathering Online, which is better than it's ever been thanks to Daybreak Games, massive shout out to Daybreak Games, it does allow you to play Commander online. However, if we're honest, the client itself is not really kitted out for it in the sense that the social element is completely gone. And Commander without the social element just isn't all that. So getting that social element, getting the gameplay of Commander in a digital platform just doesn't exist. And I think a lot of players end up stumbling onto and landing on Brawl as the equivalent of that on Arena, and it just fucking isn't, right? The difference in just feel of 4 players fucking about compared to 2 players competing to get to the finish line being winning, is just such a huge, massive gulf. It's so different. So this player felt that, and they said, maybe this isn't going to scratch their itch. Maybe, I guess not, that's not what they wanted. And that is the good outcome to come out of this. Like I said, this isn't a complete dunk on this user. I think they came to a rather grown-up solution in the end of, this thing ain't it, it's not for me. But what it does suggest to me is that there are probably a lot of players experiencing this. Players who come to Arena and Digital Magic or 1v1 Paper Magic even, and they find that it's just not what they expected or wanted because they've been weaned. They've been brought up, they've grown off the teat of a Commander. Commander is the tit that keeps on giving. There's a quote you can put on my tombstone. And that's okay, right? On the grand overall scheme of this video and this conversation, it's absolutely okay to be into the board game, social standing, fuck about and find out Magic. The problems come with when that adjusts your view of the rest of it and also gets in the way of the rest of it, which it sometimes does. On that first point, your view of the rest of it, is this idea that trying to win is somehow inherently of lower value, that it is, from a moral judgment, a bad thing. In a 1v1 scenario, or any competitive scenario, because it's not, in games it's not always 1v1, in Magic it is, but League of Legends that I mentioned earlier, 5v5, right? But in those situations, it's perfectly fine to sweat it out and try and play to the best of your ability to win. And we see this across those games where a post like this would be laughed at in those subreddits and those communities. We do still see people complain and argue and point the finger and say that person's being sweaty. They are trying to win in a way that I don't agree with. And this happens in Magic too. The idea that playing dual lands makes you a bad guy. We saw a hint of that in the subtext of this post too, whether it be expensive cards or powerful cards, whether it be your dual lands at hundreds and hundreds of dollars or just your Dockside Extortions and Crate Hoofs, which are still expensive because good Commander cards demand a price tag because there's a high demand for them, obviously. But like I said, proxying kind of dismantles all of that anyway. And in a social situation where you're trying to find the same power level as one another, absolutely you know, point out when someone might be sweating. But then taking that attitude and moving into something like Historic Brawl, which is a 1v1 scenario, or to a standard game, or just competitive games in general, I think is rather damaging. I think it's rather childish, if I'm honest. This perspective, when playing things like League, for example, or back in the day, the Xbox lobbies of Call of Duties and similar, I've always felt like it was the players that weren't good enough, and they knew they weren't good enough, were looking for excuses to point at another player who's beating them and be like, well, they're a problem. Instead of thinking, fuck, what can I do better? What is happening here? Is there a fundamental misunderstanding of how I'm playing the game? Instead, those people point to the others and say they're playing the game wrong because they're winning in a way in which they don't know how, but they don't want to approach that as a question or a learning experience. They want to approach that as a criticism. And I've talked about this on the channel many, many times before, and I'll keep saying it, is that the commander mentality that we see with like the propping up of casual play and everyone getting to do their thing, and let's not mention that we might baby the audience a little bit here. I think that does get people to have this mentality of never being self-reflective, of never asking themselves, why is it they keep playing and losing? Is it because they haven't learned something? Or is it because their opponents are the problem? Sometimes when you lose a game, casual or competitive, it's not the opponent's fault. Sometimes it's yours. More often than not, it might be a mistake that you've made. And I think some self-reflection is good for personal growth and having a mature attitude when playing a game where at the end of the day, even when it's not a competitive commander game, there needs to be a fucking winner, right? So a bit of maturity around that will go a long fucking way. And that brings me to that second point that I mentioned, like the hindrance that it has on the rest of the game. And that comes in a few ways. Firstly, we have this whole idea that Magic is Commander now, and it is. Commander is the main format of the game. I made a video last week or the week before asking why people didn't play Standard anymore, wanted to read the comments and such. And a lot of people really enjoyed telling me that Commander was the main format of the game, as if I hadn't fucking noticed. I responded to a few of them explaining that that's fine, I'm aware of it and that's okay. That is kind of a thing that no one will argue against. The point is, because it's the main format of the game, doesn't mean there can't be other formats. Other formats that scratch a different itch. Remember that turn of phrase used earlier? Sometimes a bit of a competitive 1v1, trying my hardest, can I win, is very different to, can I cast the 7-drop enchantment in Commander? Which the answer is no, not in Contemporary Commander you can't, because everything's too efficient. You're gonna get fucked before you cast it. And that leads to my local stores not playing the Standard Showdowns, not having them on. Not even, one of the stores didn't even try and get promos for it. They were trying to get promos from Wizards and decided, no, there's no point, this is standard stuff. Commander players don't want this. And that hinders Standard or Modern or Pioneer existing in those spaces already. And I think that is coupled up with the mentality that people are sweating it out in those formats. And that's not what I want, because I'm a casual Commander player. I think those things come together to overall damage the longevity and the lifespan of those other formats, and that's sad. I think you have to be careful when playing a lot of Commander or playing only Commander, that it might just skew how you view or think of the rest of the game or games in general. It's so rare for other games to have this like super casual, let's just like wear kid glove mentality. You do see it in Warhammer, which is a game that I'm very well versed in. If you didn't know I have a Warhammer channel, I do a semi-regular podcast when I'm not behind on the editing, which I currently am. But either way, there'll be a link in the description to that. Go check that out. I've realized that a lot of people don't know that I make a semi-regular Warhammer podcast and sometimes some topical videos about Warhammer too. But the point is, in Warhammer, whether that be 40k or Age of Sigmar or any tabletop wargaming, for example, a lot of the time when you're not going to a tournament or playing the most competitive, sweaty, matched play event or like sort of practice match at your local store, you kind of have to have a conversation with your opponent, a Rule Zero convo, about what you're bringing so you don't just smash them with a really meta list versus something a bit more fluffy. This is a good parallel to Commander. Commander has fluffy lists too. I have friends who I think are very good Magic players that play the dumbest decks that are like, you know, Ox and Kindred and stuff like that. But I kind of forgive it a little bit in the tabletop gaming space, because getting to change your list or fix things takes a lot more time. And sometimes people are quite literally spending dozens or hundreds of hours, I should fucking know, I'm surrounded by this stuff, painting Warhammer models. So you don't want to then have to adjust your metagame picks. You want to play the dumb thing that you spent 25 hours painting. It's kind of a bit different, because the fluff and the flavor comes so much in the creative pursuit that then is married to a physical game. Magic is absolutely creative, I'm not saying it's not, but also I have a little bit less sympathy because people aren't spending 200 hours painting up their fucking, what's a good example of this? My first point was to say Gene Stealer Colts, because I know they were bad for a while, but they've just won a big event thanks to like a very good player. Okay, you've played up your Gene Stealer Colts and they're really fucking terrible, then you feel bad. So you want to play a softer list to play a bit more of a closer game. And that exists in Magic, and I do that. I play softer lists and softer decks in Commander against a table that is newer, or playing modified precons and similar. I'm not saying that has to go out the window. What I am saying is that mentality sort of balloons outwards and starts to affect people conversing online or playing on the digital clients or not going to their local stores and trying out tournaments because they believe that Magic should be this thing where everyone holds back all the fucking time. I'm not trying to make a casual versus competitive divide. I'm just saying that the casual mentality, when never reflected on and never questioned, does have damaging effects over time. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Just some thoughts I had browsing the internet and thinking about Commander ahead of Command Fest London, which I will be at, by the way. Link in the description to that too. I cannot fucking wait. Come and say hello. I'll sign things, and if I've got space, I will play some Commander with you. That's it. I'll see you in the next one, kids. Ta-ta for now.